Hello everybody, Prynhawn da, croeso nôl I gynhadledd Cymru Byd Eang. Welcome back to this Global Wales Conference, Collaborative Approaches to Delivering International Strategies. We hope you've managed to have a lunch break and that you've enjoyed this morning's sessions. I know I certainly have. Before we go on to the afternoon plenaries, as head of the Global Wales team, I'd like to take this opportunity to personally thank all our speakers and delegates for joining us today and supporting the conference. I'd also like to say thank you to the Global Wales team for all the work that's gone into the programme. It's the first of its kind that we've organised here in Wales, and we are delighted to see the interest and to see such a wide range of partners, countries, institutions and colleagues represented today. Particular thanks also to our Minister, as well as to the Honourable Ministers from Vietnam and Telangana for their support and that of their officials today and over the years. We look forward to continuing in this spirit of partnership. So this afternoon, we've got two further short plenary sessions ahead of us before we close at 2:30 p.m. The first session will explore the value of partnerships to deliver on joint objectives, focusing specifically in this case on scholarship partnerships. After that, Professor Julie Lydon will take over the chair and we'll be joined by a range of high-profile speakers to look at what the future holds, I guess, at 2030. We'll try not to hold them to anything. Professor Ewan Davis will then take over to offer some closing remarks before the conference ends. We keep saying it, but we really do want this to be an interactive conference. We'd love to hear from you in the audience, so please do keep contributing with questions via the Q&A function. And remember, you can tweet throughout these sessions as well, and I know many of you already have, using our hashtag GW21 and tagging us at Wales_global. So it's time for our next session, Partnerships in Practice. One of the things we're proudest of in Global Wales is our growing portfolio of scholarships, and of course the wonderful scholars that we're lucky enough to welcome to Wales. From our own flagship Global Wales Scholarship to the brilliant partnerships that you're going to be hearing about this afternoon, these scholarships are a key part of the programme and a symbol that Wales is open and ready to welcome the brightest and the best from across the world. This session is about partnerships, and we really value these partnerships. Each is different, but fundamentally shaped around shared values and objectives. We benefit so much from them, and the expertise and networks each partner brings is hugely important, both to us, but also clearly to the scholars that we support. So I think it's time I welcomed our panellists. I'm so pleased to be joined this afternoon by Mai Tu Ha, the Achieving Manager at British Embassy, Vietnam. Teresa Guinan, Gilman Programme Officer at the US Department of State's Bureau of Educational and Cultural Affairs, who's representing Heidi Manley, who unfortunately couldn't be with us today because she's not feeling too well. Maria Balinska, Executive Director of the US-UK Fulbright Commission, and Janika Pushpanathan, Director South India for the British Council. We're also joined today by Angharad Thomas, International Director at Bangor University. Before we enter into discussion, I'm going to ask Heidi, Teresa and Janika to offer their thoughts on scholarship partnerships, both Global Wales, but also more broadly, before giving Angharad the floor to offer an institutional perspective on the values that these and others bring. As I said, please do feel free to post any questions in the chat. But first, if I could turn to Ha, please.
Thank you, Wayne. And hello, everybody. I'm Ha from Vietnam, and I'm working for the British Embassy in Hanoi, managing the Chevening Scholarships programs in Vietnam. So since late 2018, we have been established the partnership with Global Wales for the Chevening Wales Scholarships. And I'm very pleased today to attend the Global Wales conference to share about our partnership. So the main objectives of the partnerships is to increase the student mobility between Wales and Vietnam, to promote Wales as a study destination for Vietnamese students, and to select qualified scholars for the Chevening Scholarship who will make the bigger impact at work and for society after the returning from Wales University City. And they will become the ambassadors for Wales education in Vietnam. So in order to achieve these objectives, we have run the very comprehensive and strategic communication campaign on mainstream media, social media, to target visits to our key partners of the embassies in Vietnam. And we also organized very big conference for Children World Scholarships in 2019 with the guest speaker from Mr. Rob Humphrey from Higher Education Funding Council for Wales. And we also run the EdTech roadshows in the 4 main cities in Vietnam: Hanoi, Ho Chi Minh City, Da Nang, and Hải Phòng, to promote UK educations in general, and also Children Wales Scholarship. So thanks to that comprehensive and strategic campaigns, we have achieving some positive outcome for the our partnership. So we increased a lot of reach and interest from the Vietnamese applicants for Children Scholarship in Wales University. So in terms of applications, we received about 800 applications for Children Scholarship for 2 years, 2020 to 2022. And 28 of that select Wales University as one of the from 1 to 3 options in the application form, which I think is a great achievement. And last year and this year, we award 6 scholars to attend the courses in university in Wales. So just compared to the past, since the Children has been established in Vietnam since 1993 to 2018, there are only about 12 to 14 scholars who go to Wales University under the Children Scholarship. So this is actually half of the numbers during the past 25 years. So I think it is also very good result that we achieve as well. And a lot of applicants, have sent a lot of inquiries about the Children Wales Scholarship for us, which also demonstrate the greater interest in the education in Wales. We also increase the number of the understanding of Wales life, cultures, and tourism in Vietnam through our campaign as well. So I think there are some key factors for that successful partnership between Wales and the British Embassy in Vietnam. So firstly, I think it is effective communication when we have really regular catch up, update progress, review lessons learned and plans ahead. I think also mutual interest and collaborations, especially marketing during the marketing and interviews period, are also important to ensure the success of this partnership. And the other thing is we have the whole organization approach. So all of the embassy staff and the consulate general staff knows about the Children Wales Scholarship so that they can actually promote that, and they can actually also, tell more about that scholarship to their partners. And lastly, it is the involvement of the alumni and the scholar to be the living book to promote the Wales education in Vietnam. So that is actually some thing that I want to share here, and lovely to hear more examples and learning from others fellows in the panel today. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ha. That's great, and really interesting to hear your take on some of those success factors as well. So thank you very much for that. If I could pass on to Teresa next, please.
Hi. Good morning, Washington, D.C. time. Good afternoon for many of you. My name is Teresa Gagnon, and I'm the program officer responsible for the Benjamin A. Gilman International Scholarship Program, or Gilman Program, at the U.S. Department of State in the Bureau of Educational and Cultural Affairs. ECA's core mission is to foster mutual understanding between the people of the United States and people of other countries through a variety of exchange programs and initiatives that support the simple premise of moving people in order to share knowledge and to move ideas, which also break down stereotypes and build people-to-people relationships that promote friendly and peaceful relations. In my little branch of ECA, USA Study Abroad, we seek to increase the number of American students studying abroad to better reflect the wonderfully diverse face of America overseas, from geography to race and ethnicity. We also want to have more of our young people, or our future leaders, travel and travel safely to destinations where fewer Americans study abroad to provide a better representation of Americans within the campuses and communities in which they study and live, and to give a sense of the United States beyond just the pervasiveness of our popular culture through our best asset, our people. One way we achieve these goals is by directly supporting over 3,000 American undergraduate students on overseas, and now virtual with COVID, programs every year through the Gilman Program, which is funded through our annual appropriation from Congress. In its 20-year history, the Gilman Program has provided access and opportunity to over 33,000 American undergraduate students with high financial need from all corners of our country to study abroad in more than 151 countries. These students gain global skills and experiences that will lead to their professional and personal growth, and they share those back with their communities and campuses through a required follow-on service project. The Gilman Program has public service entwined into the fabric of the program, and these students are encouraged to go back and speak with their peers and friends to think that the impossible, like study abroad, is possible. The Gilman Program benefits from the outstanding support of a network of over 6,000 advisors from US higher education who work on a variety of campuses across the United States, from large research universities to community colleges, from liberal arts institutions to minority-serving institutions. This network is instrumental in allowing the Gilman Program to reach American undergraduate students who are underrepresented in study abroad. Almost 60% of Gilman scholars are first-generation college students, and nearly 70% are racial and ethnic minority students. We have support from the highest levels of the US government for this program. In his first speech to the State Department, our new Secretary, Anthony Blinken, expressed a deep and profound appreciation for how people-to-people exchanges bring our world closer together and convey the best of America to the world, especially to its young people. One of our biggest challenges within the Gilman Program is the inability to meet the vast demand that we have. With over 10,000 applications from outstanding students that we receive every year, we're able to fund only 3,000 scholarships from our congressional appropriation. So it is a delight for us to work with partners like Global Whales, who have collaborated with the State Department since 2019 and have the shared goal of promoting diversity and inclusion and greater participation and study abroad to further mutual understanding, to prepare citizens for the global economy and to address global challenges. We also appreciate the shared goal that we have with Global Whales to increase and diversify international student mobility among higher education institutions in our respective countries, and to support students who have traditionally been underrepresented in study abroad. So it is my pleasure to join you all here today, and I look forward to this discussion.
Thank you very much, Teresa. Some really good insights there in terms of the outcomes, I think, that we're looking for out of some of these partnerships as well. And I'm conscious there's, I'm sure the audience will have questions that they would like to ask the panel at the end, so do get thinking about that as well. So I think now we're moving on to Maria, who's going to speak about our engagement with the UK-US Fulbright program.
Thanks so much, Gwen. So my name is Maria Walinska, and I'm the Executive Director of the US-UK Fulbright Commission. And for over 70 years now, the US-UK Fulbright Commission has been sending students and scholars from the UK to the US and from the US to the UK. We're very proud to be the only exchange program to have traffic in both directions across the Atlantic. And this year we're sending around a total of 120 students and scholars both ways. And we're also very proud of our long history of collaboration with Welsh higher education. Our partner awards for American Fulbrighters at the universities of Bangor and Cardiff have been offered for over 10 years and are very popular. with American Fulbright candidates, as is the Summer Institute program for American undergraduates at Aberystwyth that's been going for 8 years. And then in 2019, we cemented our relationship with Wales even further with the launch of 5 new awards for both American and Welsh candidates in a partnership with Global Wales to increase student mobility and scholar mobility and to strengthen ties between Wales and the US. The Fulbright mission isn't just to advance knowledge, but also to promote civic engagement and build bridges of understanding and empathy between cultures, which aligns, of course, very well with what Global Wales is looking to achieve. And as these testimonies I'm about to quote from confirm, our partnership with Welsh Higher Education is definitely delivering on that mission. So here's what an American said about the experience of the Aberystwyth Summer Institute. It changed my outlook and perspective of the world. The program taught me the importance of learning from others, as it will allow you to challenge the ideas you hold and expand them through diverse new knowledge. And in the other direction, here's what a Welsh graduate student who's currently on a Global Wales Fulbright at the University of Florida recently had to say as her first year came to an end of her 2 years master's. This experience is about so much more than just a master's. It's encouraged me to step outside my comfort zone, helping me build cross-cultural connections with students, teachers, and the wider community. I've deepened my understanding of what it means to be a global citizen and also what it means to be Welsh. My goal upon return to Wales is to work in the education sector. I believe having experienced another culture will equip me to have more appreciation for diversity and ways to lead efforts of promoting inclusivity for all. So I'm sure you'll agree, these are inspiring words, and it's really exciting to see this commitment already to support education exchange in the future. And the good news is that interest on both sides of the Atlantic continues to grow. Over this past academic year, the second year of our Global Wales Awards, we saw a 5-fold increase in applications to Welsh universities from American students. And on the Welsh side, there's also been a significant increase in applications to go to the US. In fact, 19% of our UK student Fulbrighters this year are coming from Wales. We are committed to continuing to widen participation across Wales to our Fulbright opportunities. And to this end, we've just launched a pilot Fulbright Champions program to promote the Fulbright opportunity with a small group of UK universities, including Bangor and Cardiff Metropolitan. So the Wales Fulbright trajectory, in other words, is upward and constantly building on what's gone before. We're very grateful that we're playing a part in building sustainable higher education relationships between Wales and the US. And I am really pleased to be on this panel, learning from my colleagues and delighted to answer any questions.
Thank you so much, Maria. It's fantastic to hear those stats, but also to hear the student, the scholar voice coming through from your presentation as well there. Janica, can I turn to you next, please?
I'm having trouble with the video. Just 1 second. I don't know why. I'll just start talking and then maybe
that would be great. Thank you.
Video comes on.
There you are. Great.
Thank you, Gwen. And what a pleasure to be here and listening to fellow panelists. I mean, absolutely inspiring stories. And my name is Janaka Pushpanathan. I lead all of British Council's work in South India. And it's a pleasure to be on this panel, to be able to talk about not just perhaps scholarships, but also some partnerships that we are in a nascent stage of evolving with Global Wales, and I think it's going pretty well. So I'll probably talk a little bit about scholarships, but also talk widely about, more widely about the partnerships that we are envisaging with Global Wales, as well as what's going on the ground in India. You may be aware that the British Council contributes to a large scale of scholarships, including GREAT, the Charles Wallace India Trust scholarships, fellowships for the arts. We also have instituted a large scholarship pot for especially women students to go and study STEM subjects, a completely paid master's in the UK. So while there's all of those scholarships, as well as the UK government scholarships and the university bursaries, which contribute to a really huge amount of money in terms of internationalizing education in the UK. I think what we've done in British Council India is also worked with Wales on two very interesting aspects. One is the connections through culture scholarships with Wales, with Welsh government, and the more recent Global Wales British Council scholarships, which we instituted this year, and it's open for students to apply from India to go to Wales to study in all the 8 universities. So it's a scholarship pot of about 16 scholarships. We're starting small. Hopefully we'll be able to build that into a larger pot of scholarship money, not just money, but also I think in terms of student experiences that Marie spoke about just now, about the Fulbright as well. So what has also evolved as an outcome of this is a really interesting conversation between a state government, the newest and youngest state in India, which is Telangana, and the devolved administration of Wales. Like Jeremy Miles, the Minister Miles spoke in the morning about equality and authenticity and mutuality in partnerships. I think this is a great partnership that started off with the Welsh government and the Telangana government, basically saying that we'll enter into a bilateral memorandum of understanding to be able to further cooperate with each other to look at higher education opportunities both ways. So we are looking at two-way mobility under the partnership. We're also looking at huge projects in terms of how do we go about internationalizing the education system, because that's one of the key priorities of the national education policy in India, which is making a big wave and is part of every conversation that we have with universities outside of India, as well as universities in India. Indian stakeholders are wanting to realize some of the ambitions and the audacious goals of the NEP. I think one primary goal is internationalization. The second goal in the NEP is also about making these partnerships, like Gwen was saying, making these partnerships work, making them sustainable, and making them completely based on mutuality and equitability, if you will. So the government of Telangana and Wales, I think that partnership is blossoming into something strong. This morning, when the minister was unable to attend, but when the chairman of the Higher Education Council spoke, he spoke very warmly about how the state is looking at huge interventions for revising, refreshing, and reviewing their existing curriculum. And already the partnership has grown by leaps and bounds with two universities, two of the largest universities in Telangana, Osmania and Kakatiya, committing to work with Bangor and Aberystwyth. So I think in terms of the partnership ecosystem, if you will, we are very pleased at the British Council that these government-to-government bilaterals are happening. And the way to make it happen, I know that one of the questions that Gwen was talking to me about earlier was the way to make it, what's the way to make this happen? What's the way to make these sustainable? I think one of the key things is, like many speakers spoke before me, as well as the chair Ivan in the morning said, I think now success in a post-pandemic world or even in a pandemic world, I think is not about competing with each other, but actually contributing together. So I think when more of us join and contribute and work together, there are brilliant solutions, there are really great examples, great student feedback, a lot of positive stories that come off the ground. To just quickly conclude, I want to talk a little bit about the British Council Global Wales Scholarships. I think the scholarships came about from an interest of Telangana wanting to support its young people to realize their big ambitions in terms of study abroad. And Telangana, incidentally, was also the first state in India to say that we really want UK students to come and study here. So in the Vice Chancellor's delegation that happened a couple of years ago, there was this very nice understanding about study abroad two ways, and the two-way that other speakers spoke about. So we're really looking forward to this scholarship providing those opportunities for Indian students to go to the 8 universities in Wales, but hopefully the reverse will also be true, where students from the UK and Wales will come to different parts of India and experience the rich diversity that India has to offer in terms of not just education, but her arts, her culture. I think so many things in terms of food and experience and all of that. So on that, I'll stop there, Gwen, and maybe we'll have a little bit more during question and answers.
Thank you so much, Danica. That was really interesting overview. It's interesting to have that kind of policy background explained to this as well, I think. So we've heard from a range of different scholarship partners now, each offering a slightly different perspective, which has been really, really interesting. If I could turn to Anghara Thomas next, the international director at Bangor University, who has obviously worked with several of these partnerships, and also has obviously their own also within Bangor University to draw on. So Anghara, the floor is yours.
Diolch yn fawr, thank you, Gwen. Well, from Bangor University's perspective, well, first of all, it's a great pleasure to participate in the event, and I'm International Director at Bangor University, and so I'm one of the 8 Welsh University representatives working in partnership with Universities Wales under the Global Wales banner. So Bangor University has recognised the many benefits of working in partnership with scholarship bodies for many years, and we really value the relationships formed with those partners, and especially the relationships formed through the Global Wales Scholarship Initiative. Excuse me. Over the years, Bangor University has had the privilege of hosting scholars from many different countries through many different schemes, including, we've heard, Fulbright, Chevening, British Council, Commonwealth Scholarship Commission, just to name a few. So being able to expand those relationships under the Global Wales banner is a very exciting development, and I think that we'll see many benefits in the future. I think in terms of our goals and in terms of the benefits of working in partnership with scholarship bodies, there's also, we've heard about the system-to-system collaboration, and of course having scholarships is an excellent platform and a catalyst to launch collaborations, and it's a win-win for all parties. So as that kind of seed funding, if you like, it's enabling mobility to start, to take place, and for networks to build. And I think it creates a very good platform for developing further collaborative projects. We've heard today about capacity building, and of course, these scholarships can support this agenda, enabling talented students to have international education and experience overseas. But also I think we should also remember about the valuable contribution that the scholars make to their universities and to their local communities as well. And the Minister for Education has himself stated that today. Through these schemes, we're developing the global citizenship of both the scholars, but also of everyone they come into contact with at their host institutions. So in our experience, the scholarships very well qualified, very motivated students, and they internationalize the campus. They make a very valuable contribution in lectures and seminars in the academic field, but they also get very involved in extracurricular activities. They contribute to university life, as I've said, and also to the wider community. We've been fortunate to host a number of Global Wales scholars already, and reflecting on those scholars, they're professionals in their own field, they're very experienced, and they're coming and they're expanding their knowledge and their expertise through their placements. One of the scholars, for example, is planning this summer on participating in a local archaeological dig. That is unconnected to the university, but is getting involved in and contributing to, to the local community, to a local organisation and community life. So I think that, the benefits cascade much wider than just the university community. And I think another benefit, another factor as well, is the bridge building and building the long-term relationships through our scholars, and as alumni they will progress into their chosen careers, or they're already in a career and will further their careers, and we certainly find that some of our scholars are in influential positions now. They're making marked contributions in their home countries in areas of health, conservation, law, and many other areas, and contributing to policy developments in their home countries. We have scholars who've progressed in academia and have continued that research link with the university. So continuing that academic connection. And of course, we hear about the soft power and sort of making friends for Wales in the future. So certainly there are very long-term benefits of collaborating through scholarship, scholarship partnerships. So just to conclude, so it's a privilege to work in partnership with scholarship bodies. There are wide-ranging and mutual benefits, and long may it continue. Thank you.
Diolch yn fawr iawn, Angharad. Thank you for that. It's a really interesting perspective from you there as well. I mean, continuing on this same theme, I suppose. We've talked about the positive outcomes and the benefits of developing these country-level partnerships for the countries involved. We've talked about the input in particular that these scholars have to their institutions and their local communities. And some of you have also touched on the benefits to the scholar. I'm thinking particularly about Maria's presentation there as well. I mean, continuing on that theme of sort of what we can really offer the scholars through these types of partnerships, I was wondering if we could explore that in a bit more detail. I know we were really pleased a few months ago to be able to bring all of the Global Wales scholars together to meet with the Education Minister, for instance, to give them that sort of experience through these partnerships. I mean, maybe Ha, if I could turn to you first to maybe offer a view. I know Chevening has a very extensive programme in this area as well, just to offer some of your own thoughts about benefits to the individuals of participating in these schemes.
Well, certainly in terms of our experience with Chevening, for example, you've taken Chevening as an example. Well, we certainly have over the years the Chevening scholars, having returned to their home countries, have progressed into positions in government organisations, in governments. Progressed in, as I mentioned, in careers in law and contributing to policy developments. So I think that there is, it's very broad ranging, because Chevening, as an example, has a very broad brief in terms of the subject areas that are supported, and I think that it brings a wealth of range of disciplines and experience to universities, and which they then return and further develop in their home countries.
Thank you, Angharad. That's great. I can see Ha busily nodding there as well. Did you want to come in, Ha, yourself?
Yes, thanks, Gwen. And thanks, Sakura, for that. So you're right, that's for Chevening scholarship. We offer the wide range of subjects and university choices. So for example, in Vietnam, we have scholars who study in Wales in like different subjects like conservation, journalism, marketing, public policy. So a whole wide range of subjects that they are doing, and for the Chevening scholarship, that we are looking for the future leaders and influencers. So of course, when they're back to Vietnam, they are making the huge impact on the society and at work. And we're really proud of those alumni and scholars. And we often, get in touch with them to ask them to share about their stories, their career move, and also inspire the next generations of Chevening applicants who select Wales as their study destination. So I know last time there's a meeting between Education Minister with the Chevening scholars, and our scholars are very active, promoting that to the Chevening to the embassy channel, and we amplify that message just to say some of the benefit that the Chevening scholars get from being the scholars in Wales.
Thank you very much. We've had one question in from the audience, which I'm keen to put to you, and that is, I guess, linked to this and thinking about, obviously the benefits to those scholars. How do we ensure that we are able to attract those scholarship students or those scholars who are potentially not as used to travel or less familiar with travel than others might be? Teresa, I'm wondering whether you would like to come in on this.
Sure, yes. The Gilman program, one of our goals is reaching underrepresented students and students who don't necessarily have the built-in networks that your typical study abroad student does. So I think from the US perspective, one of our keys to success has been working with campus advisors who are really linked into their communities. US higher education is very bifurcated, especially on campuses and siloed. And so finding kind of those people on campuses that have connections with the multicultural office, the first generation student office, a lot of US higher education, especially minority serving institutions, sororities and fraternities are essential in the social kind of fabric of the community. Finding kind of those leaders within the targeted groups that you want to reach and having them help spread the word about your opportunities. It's one thing for a government official to go out and talk about how wonderful our program is, but if we have someone from that community that can relate better to their peers. We also had a lot of success with our alumni. We have a really strong alumni network of 33,000. And of that group, we choose about 25 a year to be our alumni ambassadors. And those are usually recent college graduates who are still very connected with their communities and campuses as well and can speak on behalf of the program. So that's just a handful of our strategies that we've used that have been successful, but a really great question.
Thank you very much. Does anybody else want to come in on that one? Maria?
Yes, thanks very much. It was a great question because it's also very much one of our strategic priorities at Fulbright. To make sure that we're representing the diversity of both of our countries in these fantastic opportunities. And since Teresa has been looking at the United States, and in the United States, we work with a third party, the International Institute of Education, that does a lot of the promotion for us and at lots of different institutions. We're looking to mirror more of that activity here in the UK, and specifically have been doing a pilot Fulbright Champions program, which is going to mirror what is the Fulbright Advisors program in the United States. So establishing at universities where we do not have that many applications, a faculty member who will be promoting the Fulbright opportunity and supporting students and faculty through the application process. And that's another thing that we're also beginning to provide more support during the application process for people, because we recognize that applying for one of these scholarships is not always that straightforward if you haven't done it before and there are not people around you who have done it, right? So we're doing things on our website to pair up applicants with alumni who can help people along. And then also, of course, just as with Teresa, we're looking at sort of targeting affinity groups of students and faculty across the UK to tell the stories of alumni who are like them, and encourage them to take advantage of this opportunity, that they're very welcome.
Thank you very much. That's really insightful. I mean, and I guess it links in with the next question as well, which is, what can we really do to build links with these scholars once they've been and studied with us, once they've taken advantage of the scholarship? If you could share maybe a little bit of your experience about kind of engagement with them, immediately afterwards, and maybe slightly longer term as well, that would be really interesting. Janica, do you want to come in on that one?
Yeah, thanks, Gwen. I think also to just build on what Maria said and what others said, I think the alumni engagement program is something that we do really. Council, we're also looking at a revised strategy of creating deeper engagement. We've been doing the engagement strategy of getting alumni involved, not just in application process, mentoring and stuff like that others spoke about. But I also think there's a wide range of scholarships, right? Like what the British Council offers in terms of, for example, we put out an open call for Future Leaders Connect, which is an excellent program for young policymakers to be able to come to the UK and actually experience policymaking in its truest sense. So there's a slew of programs like that. And what we do realize when scholars or people who've been through a British Council funded program, when they do come back, there is that I think the strategy is to use that first 6 months when they come back to be able to deeply engage, to have a strategy for sustained engagement, how they can then promote their sort of, success in the UK and share it with others. So we involve them in many of our panel discussions. We in fact even had a student panel once when we had our, Education UK conference and stuff like that. So I think alumni engagement strategy is one really good way to keep that momentum sustained and engaged. And I want to really give you a quick example of a batch of students who came to Cardiff Met actually before pre-pandemic, and we would have done 2 more batches of these students. These are young union leaders from the state of Kerala who came there on a deep dive immersion program to learn about leadership and what it means for young people in Wales, and then they were going to talk about it in the state of Kerala. So I think engagements like these will build that momentum and also interest in young people to be able to step out of their comfort zone, experience a new culture, experience a new country, and then go back with all those rich experiences to be able to share with the wider community. I think those things really work very well, and the British Council is committed to providing the platform for such engagement. Yes.
Thank you, Janica. It's really nice to hear the sort of passion for these things coming through as well in our speakers. So we've had another question in from the audience, which ties in with a theme that was discussed previously earlier in the conference around the ILE as well, and I think is a common challenge facing us all, and that is, are there more opportunities for these scholarship programs or partnerships to support the sustainability in the climate change agenda? Maria, I'm wondering whether you'd like to come in on this again.
Yes, I mean, there are lots of different ways in which to do this, of course. And one of the things that the Fulbright Commission is really focused on, we have 2 strategic priorities, basically. One is widening participation. We've spoken about diversity, equity, inclusion. The other one is how can we help tackle global challenges? And of course, climate change is one of them. And we believe that's possible in many different ways. One is in really promoting opportunities to focus on that topic, on research and teaching on that topic. And another way of thinking about this is also innovation in the virtual exchange space, where actually exchange and many of the benefits that you get from having that immersion in a different culture, you can replicate. It's not the same thing, of course, as going in person to another country, but there are ways in which juxtaposing cultures through virtual collaboration can go a long way towards enabling global learning. And so we are, for example, going to be soon launching a teaching award around global challenges that's going to be giving faculty the wherewithal to create virtual exchange courses, so that there's a sense of both focusing on these topics, the teaching of climate change, but also democratizing the experience of education exchange and enabling this to happen without carbon being burnt. So, this is just the beginning. I'm just offering a couple of suggestions. I know that there's quite a lot to be done in this area, but those are a couple of things that we're doing.
Thank you so much, Maria. It feels like that's a subject we could probably talk about for a very long time. And it also seems like a very seamless link into the next session, which is around delivering on national strategies to 2030 and really considering the challenges and opportunities that we all face going forward. So can I thank all of you for your participation in this session? It really is very much appreciated. It's my privilege now to hand over to Professor Julie Lydon, Vice-Chancellor of the University of South Wales and also Chair of Universities Wales, who's going to chair this final session. of the conference. I know we're going to benefit from some really sort of fascinating insights, and we've got a very distinguished lineup of speakers for you to finish off the conference. And I know that Professor Iwan Davies, as Chair of Global Wales, will then say a few words in closing before we end at 2:30. So Julie, the chair is yours.
Thank you very much. And can I just say a few words of welcome to everybody as we're 2/3 of the way through our conference. I just wanted to maybe start by saying higher education is a vital part of the economic and well-being of nations across the globe. And what I think we've been talking about today is about how important partnership and collaboration is to make that as open and as inclusive as we can possibly be. I think we were challenging ourselves about what more we could do. And I think particularly in the question of how we increase access, and we have people who perhaps wouldn't think of participating in global exchange programs or undertaking study in other countries, actually realizing the benefit of that and taking it back home or wherever their future lies in the world. And of course, the final point that I picked up as we were just closing the previous session is, of course, higher education and our global connections are really important in terms of meeting the global challenges. It's something that's dear to the heart, I know, of every university in Wales and many of our colleagues across the globe. So without further ado, I think this next panel session is going to be really interesting. As you just heard from Gwen, we have some great speakers. And I'm going to first of all explain the format and then to introduce the first speaker. So we're going to have about 5 minutes from each of our 4 speakers that we have joining us for this session. We'll then move to a Q&A audience participation, please. So get ready with your questions session, which I'll chair. And then we will move to our close with Professor Iwan Davies closing the session. So colleagues, can I introduce our first speaker? I almost feel as if he doesn't need a lot of introduction to many of us in the United Kingdom and across the rest of the world, but Sir Steve Smith is the UK International Education Champion. He is appointed by the UK government. He's the Prime Minister's Special Representative to Saudi Arabia for Education. He was the Vice Chancellor of the University of Exeter from 2002 to 2020. He knows Wales well, having been part of the Aberystwyth University team, and I know was involved in various ventures with the Welsh Government, including the creation of my own institution. He served as president of the Universities UK from 2009 to 2011, and he chaired UUK's international arm from 2015 to 2020. So with that introduction, I'm going to hand over to Steve. Hello, hi.
Hiya. Well, thanks very much for inviting me to speak today. We have 2 versions of the speech. We have this one, and we have the pre-recorded one because I've just come in from Saudi Arabia this morning, and we worried that immigration queues might mean that I didn't make it. But I can only say that I'm really delighted to be here. I hope everyone's enjoyed the event and will leave today really excited to take on the opportunities that global education brings. My own personal passion for international education goes back a long way to being a young lecturer at UEA back in the 70s on exchange. So I was, totally delighted to be appointed as the UK's International Education Champion, which follows a commitment in the UK government's international education strategy in 2019. All I want to do today, really, in these brief comments is to talk about the strategy, about my role, and what I see as the absolutely exciting potential and relevance that it has for global Wales. And it strikes me at the moment that there's really significant momentum behind international higher education in Wales, spearheaded, of course, by the excellent work of Global Wales itself. I have been watching developments in this area with interest, such as the agreement between the Welsh Government and then Telangana State Council of Higher Education in India. So I really think we've got many shared opportunities ahead of us. Now, a minute on the strategy. Here's how it works. I mean, it was published in March 19 by the Department of Education and the Department of International Trade. There are 2 clear central ambitions at the heart of it. Firstly, to increase the value of our education exports from then 21.2 billion a year to 35 billion pounds a year. And secondly, substantially to increase the number of international higher education students hosted in the UK to at least 600,000 per year, both of these targets to be achieved by 2030. Now, the government published an update to the strategy in February this year, recommitting itself to these ambitions. I think this update reflected it also set out actually additional actions to support the education sector from pandemic recovery to sustainable growth. The strategy is supported by the Education Sector Advisory Group, co-chaired by Minister Michelle Donnellan and Minister Graham Stewart. It's formed of representatives across the breadth of the UK education sector, the British Council, and importantly, the devolved administrations. The Welsh government nominated Professor Ewan Davis as the Welsh representative. You will, of course, know him well through his roles as VC of Bangor and chair of Global Wales, and of course, today as chair of today's opening session. Now, the advisory group has provided an important forum to share and respond to the international opportunities and challenges for education exports and to identify how best government can focus its support. Personally, I'm absolutely delighted to see what Ewan, with his Welsh wealth of expertise, can bring to the forum, as well as, crucially, the views of Welsh institutions. Now, my role is to support the delivery of the strategy, growing education exports for the benefit of the whole of the UK. I'll be developing strong international relationships in new and established markets and help to tackle challenges and barriers. My immediate priority countries have been determined by the analysts in the department, and they will be India, Indonesia, Nigeria, Saudi Arabia, and Vietnam. These markets have been chosen because they present significant growth potential and where we think there are also barriers we want to resolve. The second tier of countries and regions that I'm going to be working on are Brazil, Mexico, Pakistan, China and Hong Kong, and of course, Europe. Now, here in Wales, and particularly to members of the audience from those nations, you will be most interested in our work together in Vietnam and India. I will be spearheading overseas activity and opening up international opportunities, including in priority areas for Wales, whether this is boosting student recruitment, supporting the building of system-to-system engagement and HE partnerships, or promoting and growing TNE. I'm pleased to be able to say that I've been able to engage internationally with my priority countries virtually over 25 meetings we've had. This has been positive, and I can see real opportunities alongside, of course, a need to identify where the barriers are. For example, this month, I'm holding a series of meetings with Indian education figureheads, and I hope to conduct engagements with Vietnam shortly too. I will look to work collaboratively with colleagues in Wales, particularly alongside the Global Wales Initiative, to ensure that our respective activities are mutually beneficial. My overarching aim is to build key relationships, support emerging priorities, such as the mutual recognition of higher education qualifications in India. Thank you, Julie.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Steve. And we really appreciate both your expertise and your passion for what we're doing in Wales, contributing to our work here and, of course, for the rest of the United Kingdom. You picked up the theme of working collaboratively, partnerships. It's a very strong focus in this conference. And of course, it is the underpinning of much of our work in Wales, both as a nation within our walls and collectively wherever we are working with colleagues across the globe. So it's my very great pleasure to introduce our second speaker. This is Dr. Alan Goodman, who is the CEO and President of the Institute for International Education. Alan is the 6th president. He has a PhD in government from Harvard, an MPA from the John F. Kennedy School of Government, and a Bachelor of Science from Northwestern University. So Alan, it's our very great pleasure that you've joined us today, and I'll hand over the chair to you.
Judy, thank you so very much. And, and thanks to Steve for such a clear exposition and example of what a national strategy involves and how it is an all of government approach and needed to be committed over the long term. So bravo and congratulations for that, and also for what Wales is doing to be part of the global ecosystem of international collaboration and research. It's particularly important, I think, and noteworthy that we're holding this conference actually in the midst of a pandemic, because all of us believe that we will be saved from the science and learning needed by the science and learning needed from all kinds of viruses, natural as well as man-made, biological as well as political, through international collaboration, international partnerships. It's interesting to note that in the case of North American medicine, it was the work of your Edward Jenner in the 1790s that was discovered by one of the founders of the Harvard Medical School through collaboration, through correspondence, that introduced widespread serum vaccination against smallpox here in the United States. The founder, Dr. Benjamin Waterhouse, actually studied abroad. He studied in London, Edinburgh, and then got his medical degree in Leiden. And it was through this international collaboration, correspondence, that he learned of Jenner's work. Jenner sent him serum samples, and that began the conquest. It took a long time, but began the conquest of smallpox here in North America. I think we're all here because we believe that that kind of collaboration, that kind of international educational exchange is critical to our future and the future of the planet. COVID-19 is the 12th pandemic in IIE's history since we were founded in 1919. And during each, surprisingly, international partnerships, educational exchange and activities continued. And after each, all of these activities surged. And I think that's the kind of preparation we need and outlook we need from here to 2025 and 2025 to 2030. Now, these dynamics, the continuation of partnerships and the surging after a pandemic is declared over, these dynamics are sustained by institutional academic partnerships. Nothing could be more important and more central to the international education project. And they're also made possible by three dimensions that are so important in the past, now important, and will be important as we get to 2030. One is what Steve spoke about, national priorities. Governments need to get entry and travel and visa regulations ready for different scenarios, different environments, different challenges. But it's also an all of government approach. The priorities need to be set for the country as a whole. And I think it's exemplary to have priorities that mention actual numbers of international students and exchanges and collaborations that all of us would like in this profession and our profession would like to see increased and sustained. So the first requirement for now and into the future is a national policy, national priority, national strategy. The second really important requirement is what Wales is doing. Every country has regions, every region is a little different, and it's so important for international students in particular to see a whole of country rather than a few cities and a few name brands as opportunities for educational attainment, educational exchange, institutional scientific collaboration. So we're entering a period where I think it will be more important than it's ever been for regions to explain themselves to the world and market themselves to the world, as Wales is clearly doing. And finally, it's important for universities to have their own foreign policies. They need to be intentional about where they're looking for students, where they're welcoming students, how they're prepared to receive those students. And foreign policy, international strategy is increasingly a part of institutional strategic plans. But the world is a very large place. It's a very complex place. Markets are very large for international students. And so every university inside a region needs to be thinking about, and post-pandemic needs to be active and not just assume that once things are over and borders are fully open, that students will come. So I think there is work to be done for all of us at the national, the regional, and the institutional level. All of that work is required, and all of that work takes intentionality. Your famous poet, Dylan Thomas, reveled in his ability to, with unfettered access, read virtually any book he wanted. But he also observed that the books told me everything, but not the reasons why. And I think we're all in international educational exchange and promoting it because it takes more than just reading a book or hearing about something. It takes the actual mobility of students and scholars. And that is something to which all of us at this conference and on this panel for sure are committed. Judy, thank you very much.
Thank you, Alan. I think that was it was very thought-provoking, and I was busy scribbling down notes as you were speaking, as I expect many of our audience members were. But I think that closing point you made about the importance of mobility is critical. We're really delighted with the Welsh Government's support for our international exchange programme going ahead, and long may we be able to continue both the physical and digital engagements across borders. So thank you so much. Our third speaker is Dr. David Blaney, Chief Executive of the Higher Education Funding Council for Wales. David moved to the Funding Council in 2005 as Head of Funding and Reconfiguration and became its Chief Executive in 2012. He has a degree in Business Studies and a doctorate from Cardiff University, which focuses on the management of higher education. Prior to joining the Funding Council, he held a number of roles at Gwent College of Higher Education, the University of Wales, Newport as it became, as the Head of Academic Department and Director of Quality and Assistant Principal Academic. So David, can I hand over to you?
Thank you, Julie, and good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to my front room. I speak to you today as a Global Wales partner in my role as Chief Executive of the Higher Education Funding Council. But my personal involvement in Global Wales extends beyond just funding the partnership. I've been personally involved in building the relationship between Wales and Vietnam, having been part of the Global Wales delegation which visited Ho Chi Minh City and Hanoi in 2017. And I'll come back to that in a few minutes. Since that time, in 2020, the Welsh Government has published its international strategy with three core ambitions. Namely, one, to raise Wales's profile internationally. Secondly, to grow the economy by increasing exports and attracting inward investment. And thirdly, to establish Wales as a globally responsible nation. Now, overseas students in Welsh universities contribute more than 600 million in export earnings to the Welsh economy, 600 million pounds, that is, as well, of course, as enriching our cultural diversity and spreading a positive message about Wales on their return home. So in many ways, we're already making a contribution as a sector to the economic well-being of Wales, although there's always more to be done. In some ways, I might argue that the three core ambitions of the Welsh Government are in the wrong order, or perhaps it's just a case of leaving the best until last, because I think it's the globally responsible nation aspect underpinned by the Well-being of Future Generations Act, an act of the Welsh Government, which is key to this because of the focus on sustainability, which is implied by that legislation. So this is not just about quick commercial transactions, a quick sale and move on. It's about establishing really secure, solid relationships for the long term. And the system-to-system approach, which is espoused by Global Wales, underpins this. And as I said a moment ago, I had the pleasure of experiencing this in action in Vietnam, where we had the opportunity for individual universities to establish relationships between Wales and Vietnam, but also explored how both countries run their education systems. So this is not a one-way street. It's not about getting some students to come to Wales with a bit of research collaboration. It's much more. It's about two-way mobility and mutual learning, support and development. We can share information, for example, on how we regulate a system of autonomous universities in Wales. That's a contribution we can make. But we can also learn from how Vietnam develops their system, not least because they're dealing with a system of over 400 universities and we have 8. So there is plenty to learn in both directions. They might not have all the answers, but neither do we. And we can work together and learn together. So for me, it is about a long-term mutually beneficial partnership, system to system, institution to institution. That is what will make for sustained positive relationships from which good things will flow, including economic benefit, which we all need to try to secure. And that approach being adopted by Global Wales will work for our universities. In my view, it will also work for our nations. So thank you very much, Julie.
David, thank you very much. And I think that was a useful interjection in the introductions, because clearly here we are. Your focus, I think, was on the country level, and particularly I think the role that bodies such as yours play in both enabling and overseeing that the quality of what we do remains good. And I absolutely endorse the points that have already been made by all 3 speakers. Nobody has the prerogative of knowing everything in any space. So actually the learning that happens across nations is huge. And I've personally experienced that, and I welcome you raising that point. Our final speaker today is Vivian Stern, again, somebody that will be well known to UK colleagues. She's the Director of Universities UK International. This is the body that represents UK universities around the world and enables us to flourish internationally. She has over 20 years experience of working in higher education policy and politics at national and international levels. She's a member of several boards and advisory committees, including the Education Sector Advisory Group of the Department for Education and the Department for International Trade, the board of UKRI's Fund for International Collaboration, and the British Council's Education Advisory Group. So without further ado, I'm going to hand over the digital microphone to Vivian. Welcome, Vivian.
Thank you very much indeed. And I'm very sorry that I missed the contributions by Alan Goodman and Sir Steve, although I've had the advantage of seeing his video in advance. But Alan, I think, is always a wonderful person to hear speaking. So I'm sorry that I missed his contribution. I suppose one of the wonders of digital technology is I can catch up a bit later. I think, though, just at the risk of repeating what others have said, I see a moment of great opportunity for Wales and for the UK as a whole in the international space. And perhaps in the next 4 minutes, I'll try and squeeze in the reasons for optimism, but also some of the things that we have to kind of watch out for, I guess. The first is that I think it's non-trivial to have a government which is so clearly focused on the opportunity that the international links that Welsh universities have around the world creates for Wales as a nation. And I think that clear understanding is replicated across, I think, all 4 nations of the UK. And the Westminster government may have lots of faults. I won't enumerate them here, but one of those areas in which I think there is very little separating the university sector from the government vision is in its understanding that our international connections in education, in research, in the exchange of people across borders are strategic assets. They're strategic assets for the UK in a number of dimensions. That was recognised by the government in the recently published integrated review, which put our relationships at the higher education research level really very high up the government's list of mechanisms, tools that it can deploy in crafting Britain's place in the world. I think the moment that we're living through is also one in which we can be reasonably optimistic, because we're bouncing back from a period where, frankly, we were trying to forge international connections, at least in terms of welcoming international students to our shores with at least one hand tied behind our backs. And the launch of the graduate route just last week, something that right across the sector we all argued for, gives us a real opportunity to recapture what I think has been lost in the understanding of the UK, not only as a great destination for study because our universities provide high quality education, but also a welcoming destination, a destination where students are, they are wanted and they're valued and they're really well looked after. We have, however, lost significant ground. And one of the consequences of that has been, over the last decade, an increasing dependence or reliance on a relatively small number of countries for the source, as the source of international students in UK universities. And so I think as we look ahead to 2030, it's not just about increasing the proportion, the number of international students who study in Wales, who study in the UK overall. It's also about making sure that we're recovering our lost position in countries where, frankly, the UK used to be first or second choice and no longer is. And that's one of the reasons that the UK has a project at the moment, which has been going on for about 18 months and has already produced one report and is about to produce a second, with the petulant title, Why Aren't We Second? Asking the question, where has the UK lost ground? What are the reasons for that? What factors could lead us to be more successful in the future? And then asking the question, I think, both to ourselves and to government, what are we going to do about it? And I see Steve as having an absolutely central role in helping us to overcome some of the barriers to people choosing UK. But as I assume Alan has said, and I know that David has also just rehearsed, we see the international connections of universities about being so much more than student exchange. And indeed the connections between our students going and spending time in other countries, learning other languages, experiencing study and research in a wider variety of places, and what that brings back not only to the university sector but to the nation as a whole means that we have ourselves as an organisation put outward student mobility right there amongst our top priorities. I mean, to an extent that I think has sometimes raised eyebrows. And here I think we should be a little grateful to Wales for having innovated through the creation and the launch of the Welsh International Exchange Programme as a counterpart to the Turing scheme launched by the Westminster government earlier this year, because we will be able to see how two slightly different schemes produce different sorts of long-term results for our sector. And hopefully some of those good things about the Welsh programme could eventually inform the development of the Turing programme. But certainly it allows us to back up the message when we go around the world and tell our counterparts that we're interested not only in taking students and educating them here, but also in making sure that our students have opportunities to study and work in other settings. This gives us something to put weight behind that, and also great opportunity in the formation of new relationships. And although the topic of today's discussion isn't research collaboration, I would draw a connection between all of these types of activity and our performance as a research system in the UK. And of course, that is particularly important when it comes to the exchange of postgraduate research students, or our opportunity to host postgraduate research students in our universities. And that perhaps brings me in 1 minute or less to a couple of challenges that I'd like to mention. I think when you look at the UK's performance over the last decade, you can be distracted by the overall stagnation in our position as a top choice destination for international students. Sitting underneath that's perhaps something that worries me even more, which is the loss of the UK's position as a preeminent or a first choice destination for postgraduate research students. I think that there are some policy questions for us to address here, because postgraduate research students form a really important part of the sort of foundational underpinning of the performance of our universities as a whole, and of course of the relationships that we have with those individuals if they go and work in other systems. So I think we need to pay particular attention to where international students in the postgraduate research space are coming from, and what the trends are in that area at the institutional, national and national levels. I think the other thing I will mention is the changing relationship with the European Union. It seems to me obvious that we will see a period in which our attractiveness as destination for European students is in decline. And I think as a sector, we need to think about what we're going to do about that. For me, one of the most obvious answers is a better effort nationally in promoting the UK as a study destination. And whilst I think the international education strategy published by the Westminster government and its counterpart strategy in Wales have done a very good job of galvanising sector activity, and actually between departments within those respective governments, I still think there is a disconnect between the four nations of the UK and the way that we are coming together to support each other, particularly in relation to the promotion of the UK as a study destination and Wales within that. And that's a topic that I think we should all work a little bit together on. In view of time, I better stop, but of course, happy to take questions.
Vivian, thank you so much. As with all our speakers, that was a thought-provoking session, and of course you do always provide some challenge back to us, as well as demonstrating how you are challenging on our behalf across the United Kingdom and beyond its borders. Thank you to all four speakers. I'm going to go to some questions, and the first question I want to ask is, from the four of you, what advice would you be giving institutions, therefore, in the development of their international strategies? And maybe I could start with Alan.
I hope I've unmuted, and great to see you, Vivian, and great to meet David, and appreciate everybody's comments. For us, for me, the most important thing is the pandemic has caused universities everywhere to think about their international footprint, their international strategy, their international offices, their ability to create welcoming environments, as Vivian spoke about. And now that that experience needs to be translated into a strategic plan, a foreign policy, as I put it, for the next 3 years, the next 5 years, to get us to 2030. Who do we want? Where do we want them to come from? What do we offer? And how prepared are we when the next pandemic strikes? We had 700,000 international students in the United States when COVID broke out. Every university had, and institutions like mine had to develop a plan, because there was no plan to take care of them in the summer when most went home or most had jobs, and none of that happened. So I think this is an invitation to have a strategy for the future that shows how much we value international students and how prepared we are to care for them.
Thank you, Ryan. Can I move to Steve Smith next?
Thanks. Yes. Well, I mean, I've 4 very quick answers. Firstly, the most important thing to do is to have a strategy, have a view about what you want to do internationally. It is interesting how many places don't. And I think that's, and one of the great achievements of Global Wales, by the way, has been to focus discussion on exactly that point. And I thoroughly commend that. Secondly, I would say, make sure you diversify your risk, because there are so many changes coming that eggs in baskets, etc. I think one needs to think about that. And again, Julie, that can be done very effectively by talking to colleagues in a setting such as Global Wales. Thirdly, work with partners and government. I mean, there is an enormous amount of support in Wales for the universities and their outward facing activity. It is quite interesting in my role how a few institutions around the place want to go off and do their own thing, and that's absolutely fine. But there is, as Vivian indicated, there is a lot of support, both in the Welsh government, but also all the 4 governments in the UK. So I think work with parties, partners and government, and become more than the sum of the parts. And again, Global Wales scores well on that. And finally, and I say this with a genuine humility because it's something I've got wrong, you really need to listen to what your overseas partners want. I mean, it's unbelievably tempting to turn up with the nice box, nicely wrapped with a bow on top, and say, we're brilliant at this, wouldn't you like it? It'll cost you X. I've certainly found in my experience, what governments want differs, and we need to adapt, what we offer according to their needs.
Steve, thank you so much for that. And I think we'll perhaps reflect particularly on your final point. Can I perhaps go to Vivian next? Because Vivian, you put a challenge down at the end of your introductory session about us losing our position, global position in the world. Can I ask you what your advice would be in terms of institutional strategies?
Well, I think I'm obsessed with the way that we communicate our offer to international students, partially because I've seen so much evidence that people don't understand that our visa policy has changed. They don't actually understand how flexible and adaptable universities have proved to be in the UK during the course of the last 18 months. And I think we just need to do a much better job of getting the word out. And I think the frustration that I have is that individual institutions try very hard to do this, but you need something at the national and at the UK level for institutions to come in on the back of, in places where, frankly, it doesn't make a huge amount of sense for an individual institution to invest a lot of marketing effort, because the return is going to be relatively modest and it might take a long time to achieve. So those national campaigns need to be out there in markets where frankly the returns aren't going to be enormous, but there is an opportunity over the longer term. And I mentioned the report, Why Aren't We Second, which I think we'll be publishing in the next couple of weeks. By the time I got to the end of reading the first draft of it, my comments had stopped being sort of intelligent and pithy. It was just repeated instances of me just writing "arg" in the margins, because you see the perceptions lagging behind the reality of how the UK is adapting itself to the needs of international students, including on dimensions like employability, where I know, because I see what so many institutions do, that they put a huge amount of effort into helping make sure that it's not just about having a graduate route, but you also provide tailored careers advice and support for students transitioning to the labour market, placement opportunities, etc. And so I suppose that brings me to my second point, which is that we've got a strong reputation, but we shouldn't be complacent about it. And understanding the motivations for international study and how much employability matters means that I think there should be a bit more focus at the institutional level on that dimension.
Thank you. David, can I move to a slightly different topic rather than institutional strategies for a moment to make sure we get a diversity? So we have the Study in Wales brand, and as Steve and colleagues have mentioned, we're very proud of our work collectively in Wales. And of course, Scotland have a similar branding. What more do you think we can do, picking up Vivian's point, to build a Study UK brand, and actually then we all get the benefit from and can deliver to?
I think that Steve is right in terms of working with government, both Welsh government and UK government. I think essential to that, because they have a lot of the machinery which will allow some of that messaging to be transmitted. I also think on a sort of more micro level, I would go back to the kind of comments I was making about long-term partnership, and that has been echoed by other speakers here. And if it's a long-term partnership, you've got to be prepared to lose some as well as gain some. That is to say, if you look at any of the individual transactions that constitute a partnership, sometimes you'll be the winner, sometimes your partner will be the winner, and actually in the end the partnership wins. So it's about, to my mind, it's about valuing the partnerships that you create rather than valuing the transactions that come from those partnerships. And that's more easily said than done, because very often what you measure is the output from the transactions and not from the partnership as a whole. So getting that sort of mindset right, I think, is really important for the longer term sustainability of these relationships.
Thank you. Steve, we've got a question from the audience, if I could come to you, sorry. Clearly you will have seen and had experience firsthand of various models of delivery of transnational education. I just wondered, the question asks, what do you see as models of delivery for the future with what we've been through for the last 16 months?
I think the world's turned upside down on TNE. And since being appointed to the government role, the thing that's absolutely hit me is that TNE was delivered in certain ways by certain institutions for very specific reasons. and it was contrasted with person to person education. That's changed. And I suppose to summarize the core argument, what governments abroad are looking for increasingly is a very flexible program. I mean, all the I don't have discussions with governments abroad at the moment, which is, we'd like to send you another 8,000 students. It is, we've got a skills issue. We want to deal with the skills issue. Could you think about some TNE? But then maybe could we do a blended system whereby they do a year with you and then a year with us? And could you have a franchise partner? What about a branch campus where they do the first bit and then come to you? So all the models, I think, have gone up in the air. And what was one certainty over the core choice set, I think, has been incredibly changed. And that's a demand point. It's not a supply point. It's a demand point. On the supply side, I think on every campus, TNE, the way of delivering TNE traditionally is much more now mainstreamed within what we do on our own campuses. So I would say don't rely on the old certainties, because governments around the world will not be having the resource to deliver it in exactly that same way.
Thank you. I'm conscious that we are just running over our time, but I would like perhaps to ask Alan to take the final question, which again is from the floor. In the light of our recent experience, do you see partnerships following similar patterns as before? So whilst TNE is, I suppose, one form of partnership, I think this is a broader question about partnerships.
I think Steve is right about saying you really have to listen to the partner that you want to have, and what they're needing and what will be useful to them is going to be different. The virtue of our institutions, whether they're organizations or regional efforts like Global Wales, or universities themselves in the US and the UK, is we know how to do this. We know how to nurture partnerships. We know how to pivot when we have to pivot rapidly to different forms of partnerships. And I think that's one of our strengths. We're not confined by orthodoxy of any political sort. So we can do these things. And that's the tremendous opportunity that the UK and the US have as higher education giants and pole stars for the future. Thank
you. I think on that cheerful note, I'm going to say thank you to our speakers today, to Steve, to Alan, to David and to Vivian. Thank you so much. And I'm going to hand over to Professor Ewan Davis, who many of you will know is Vice-Chancellor of Bangor University and Chair of Global Wales.
Thanks, Julie. And may I also, on behalf of the conference and conference organizers, thank all the speakers and delegates for what has been, I think, a stimulating series of sessions, both in the breakout sessions and also the plenary sessions. Can I thank in particular Professor Son as Minister for Education and Training of Vietnam, Professor Reddy, Chairman of the Telangana State Council, and also Jeremy Miles, a member of the Senedd and also Minister for Education and the Welsh language of the Welsh Government. If you'd like to follow up with any of our speakers from any of the sessions today, please visit the biographies of the speakers, which are in the virtual hub to access contact details that have been provided for you there. So in the virtual hub, you'll see the contact details of all the speakers. Do follow up with them. Please also tweet about the conference using our hash GW21 and tagging us at Wales_global. We've also referred at the outset of the conference that recordings and slide materials will be ready by the end of the week, and you'll be notified when these are ready. So can I therefore sum up the conference for you in a few words? We heard about system-to-system work. And Vietnam and Wales, of course, is an example of such system-to-system engagement. The benefits, we were told, are both mutual and reciprocal. The process of examining what reform is of a higher education system, and one which Vietnam has actually engaged in, has also enabled Wales to ask itself as part of contributing to the debate of what a world-class university system is. There's mutual learning and mutual understanding. It's the point I think we just heard at the end now around listen to what our partners want, listen to what our partner countries want as well, is just as important. So as the world emerges from the pandemic in the coming months and borders reopen, international mobility is the key to making sure that we remain an outward-looking nation. That's particularly the case in the context of Wales. Outgoing students and academics and staff are vital ambassadors in promoting that message overseas. Cultural awareness, education are all part of transforming lives. We've heard about the ILE today. It's not in competition with the Turing scheme, and it's hoped that students will benefit from both programs where they are here in Wales. At the same time, of course, Erasmus Plus still offers a number of areas for the UK to engage in, such as Erasmus Mundus, Joint Masters, Jean Monnet, and so on. What the International Learning Exchange Programme offers is a broader range of educational mobility. We heard about the point about developing partnerships which are mutual, which are reciprocal. And the characteristics of the ILE, as was explained to us, covers all education sectors, universities, further education, and also schools, and also the voluntary sector. It covers inward and outward mobility, and also is now multi-annual, offering long-term security for future partnerships, which is so important in really developing partnerships, that security and that confidence. And of course, it supports learners, educators, and researchers to be mobile. So the last few words from me. The key words around collaboration, the importance of collaboration, of listening, and also ensuring that we respond in a fleet-of-foot way. Collaborative adventure, collaborative elements are far more important, perhaps, than the competitive elements in education and international education in particular. Can I then finish with the remarks of Jeremy Miles, member of the Senedd and Minister of Education for Wales. He, I think, summarised what we are all about as educators. He said, it's difficult to value the transformational experience of mobility. He said, it's priceless, transforming lives. And with the words that universities are both windows and doors to the whole world, which is what Global Wales is seeking to capture in its processes, are the words that I would like to finish today's conference on. Thank you so much for participating. I hope you enjoyed as much as we all have in this whole process. Diolch yn fawr iawn.